The world's oil lifeline could be severed in a matter of minutes, and the consequences would be catastrophic. Following the recent U.S. strike on Iran's nuclear facilities, global tensions have erupted. What was once a theoretical threat is now unfolding in real time. Iran is actively considering shutting down the Strait of Hormuz in retaliation, a move that could detonate shockwaves through the global economy. This narrow maritime corridor carries nearly 20% of the world's oil and gas exports. If Tehran blocks it, the impact would be immediate. Oil prices would surge, economies could buckle, and a broader conflict might erupt. With President Trump doubling down on his hardline stance and Iran vowing to strike back, the threat to this vital waterway is more real than ever. Iran has long signaled both its capability and intent to close the strait. With the nuclear strike as a trigger, the world now teeters on the edge of a geopolitical energy quake. Before we dive into the full impact of this crisis, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on global events that could change everything. The Strait of Hormuz isn't just a body of water between Iran and Oman. It's the jugular vein of global energy. Around 20 million barrels of oil pass through it every single day, accounting for a fifth of global supply. That trade is worth over $600 billion annually. It's not just oil. Liquefied natural gas, particularly from Qatar, also flows through the strait in massive volumes. This corridor is dangerously narrow, only 33 kilometers at its tightest point, making any military blockade or disruption potentially devastating. Iran holds a strategic perch along the northern edge of the strait, and for decades, it has entrenched military assets across its coastlines, missiles, naval forces, and Revolutionary Guard units built for asymmetric warfare. These are not defensive assets. They're designed for disruption and intimidation. Iran's threat to close the strait isn't a bluff. It's a tactical card Tehran has carefully kept in its back pocket. Now, it may be ready to play it. While Iran sits on one side of the strait, every Gulf nation is deeply entangled with it. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Iraq, Qatar, and the UAE rely on the strait to export energy. Saudi Arabia alone sends more than 6 million barrels of oil through the corridor each day. Kuwait and Iraq have virtually no alternative routes. For Qatar, the world's leading LNG exporter, the strait is a lifeline. Now, with the U.S. bombing of Iranian nuclear sites, Tehran's threat to close the strait isn't just a response to Washington. It also jeopardizes the entire Gulf economy. Ironically, Iran's retaliation would inflict significant damage on its neighbors, pushing Gulf states toward confrontation. These nations, heavily armed and increasingly assertive, may not wait for U.S. leadership to act. If their oil exports are threatened, they could intervene independently, escalating a regional crisis into a full-scale war. What was once a distant risk is now a rapidly forming reality. If the strait were closed, even temporarily, the ripple effects would circle the globe within hours. Oil markets would erupt. Prices would skyrocket, not just from disrupted supply, but from panic. The disappearance of 20% of global oil flow would send shockwaves through every industry. Countries like India, China, and Japan, major importers of Gulf oil, would be among the hardest hit. Strategic reserves might soften the initial blow, but not for long. Beyond oil, the disruption would paralyze global shipping. Freight costs would soar, insurance rates through the Gulf would spike, and companies would scramble to reroute. Inflation would rise, hitting manufacturing, transportation, and electricity production. In the U.S., already grappling with economic uncertainty, the shock would intensify pressure on President Trump. Global supply chains, still fragile from past disruptions, would be thrown into chaos again. All this would happen before a single shot is fired in a broader war. Iran's consideration of shutting the strait has shifted military confrontation from possible to probable. The U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet, stationed in Bahrain, is tasked with keeping the strait open. American warships regularly patrol the region, but even they may struggle to keep the vital route clear under a sustained Iranian attack. Iran's strategy is likely to involve laying naval mines, deploying fast attack boats, and firing missiles, all designed to make the strait impassable. The U.S. response would almost certainly involve high-risk operations, mine clearing, neutralizing land-based missile sites, and countering Iranian naval units. Such a military campaign could take weeks, even months. Oil shipments would remain frozen during this time, and the global economy would continue to bleed. Moreover, Iran could mobilize proxy forces across the Middle East, Hezbollah in Lebanon, militias in Iraq, Houthis in Yemen, opening multiple fronts in a regional war. The result, a sprawling, chaotic conflict, potentially far worse than any single military clash between Iran and the U.S. As economic fears mount, the world's diplomatic apparatus is being tested. The UN is bracing for emergency sessions. Nations like China and Russia, both economically tied to Gulf oil and politically close to Iran, may step in to mediate, not just to protect energy interests, but to limit American influence. Meanwhile, Europe is desperate to prevent another Middle East war, but diplomatic efforts may move too slowly to stop a fast-developing crisis. President Trump is under growing international scrutiny. The preemptive strike on Iran's nuclear sites has triggered a backlash, with allies pressing for restraint and adversaries maneuvering to exploit the chaos. Domestic political pressures are surging as energy prices rise and calls for accountability grow louder. Every day of indecision deepens the divide between global powers and narrows the path to a peaceful resolution. As nations scramble to protect their interests, cooperation gives way to competition, and the threat of wider conflict increases. The threat of Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz is no longer a distant what if. It is an imminent danger, directly linked to escalating U.S.-Iran tensions. The strait's narrow passage, immense energy importance, and explosive military buildup make it one of the most dangerous flashpoints on Earth. Should Iran follow through, the consequences would be swift and staggering. Soaring oil prices, economic panic, military escalation, and a reshaped world order. This isn't just a regional conflict, it's a global crisis in the making. In a world already strained by inflation, unstable alliances, and fractured supply chains, the closure of the strait could set off a chain reaction felt for years. As President Trump navigates this volatile moment, the decisions made now will determine whether the world steps back from the brink or tumbles headfirst into its next major war. What do you make of Iran's threat to shut the Strait of Hormuz? Could this be the flashpoint that ignites a global conflict? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more critical updates on global events.